Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. In this technical analysis of the stock market video, I call it breaking point because I think that's the point where we're at with this market. We could break wide open in here. I'm going to look at the S&P 500 today, and we're going to look at the traditional moving average view. We're going to look at the Elliott Wave picture, and I'm going to show you my preferred count and the alternate count. Even with the alternate count, we've got, significant more room to the downside. Then I want to take a look at the VIX and the put to call ratios. People are saying that the sentiment, the sentiment surveys are bearish, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't think the actions are matching up with the words. And then we're going to take a look at AMD and Micron Technology, which both of these semiconductor stocks warned here again. I mean, Micron's warned multiple times, and AMD warned again on Thursday. I mean, evaporating demand. You can't get much more negative than that. All right, so let's start off here with the side-by-side of the Dow Industrials, the S&P, and the Nasdaq Composite. They were all up this week, but they gave a whole heck of a lot back. The Dow was up 571, the S&P up 54, and the Nasdaq Composite was up 77 at the close. And you can see this gave quite a bit back. Very close to taking out the June lows. We still haven't done it on the Nasdaq Composite. The other two we have. The Dow is also very close over here to closing this gap. This gap was created in November of 2020. And it just hasn't closed yet, but it could easily happen next week, early next week. So that is the picture there. Let's take a look at the Dow Industrials versus the Dow Transports. The transports were up 419 points, so everything was bouncing this week. And when I looked at the global indices, tell you all the global indices were up this week too. But again, almost all of them, except for Germany and Canada, they all closed before Friday happened in the United States. Now, Germany closed about 2 hours into the United States. It closed, I think, at 10:30 Central Time on Friday morning. So they started giving some back. Anyway, this is the picture we've got. We're still in sync to the downside in terms of a bear mode. Let's go back to the home page. Here's the S&P. It was down about 105 points on Friday. So big, strong rally Monday, Tuesday, stalling out on Wednesday, and give it back on Thursday and Friday. So that's where we're at. We're going to look at the Elliott Wave picture. Here's my preferred count. Now, here's where I've got that we are in intermediate wave 3 to the downside. Intermediate wave 1 finished at the low in mid-June. Then we got that big bounce that took us up into August, around August, mid-August, let's just say. And then now we're rolling on down in intermediate wave 3. So why do I say breaking point? Well, because we're within a third of a third of a third. We're within the third intermediate. And within the third intermediate, we're right approaching the middle of the third minor wave. And within the third minor wave, we have just started down in the third minute wave. Now, when you are in the third wave, you need an impulsive wave structure like this. There cannot be any overlap. There's no ending diagonals or leading diagonals or anything like that. You need nice, solid 5-wave structure. And that's what I'm looking for. This is a path forward. In terms of projecting, I'm not projecting it to be here or here. Although I will say this wave right here, this is a normal length intermediate wave 3 down here at around 2400 based on the size of intermediate wave 1 and intermediate wave 2. So that's why I've got this so negative looking and why I'm thinking it's kind of, very ominous, breaking point that we're at just because of the kind of move that intermediate wave 3 projects to. Okay, so quite significant move. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if that evaporating demand that AMD's talking about is impacting everything else. I mean, we've had some pretty significant warnings. I mean, FedEx coming out saying macroeconomic conditions, literally changing things within weeks. So, and then On the emotional side for the stock market, we've got a full moon today. Full moon is occurring at 3:55 p.m. Central Time today, the Hunter's Moon, also called the Blood Moon. Kind of ominous, the Blood Moon for this type of this timing of the stock market. So now, okay, I'm saying this could break wide open, but what's the alternative? The alternative is that we're doing an expanding leading diagonal pattern, and this fits perfectly, and we're coming down here in a fifth minor wave. Now, in an expanding leading diagonal, the fifth wave must be greater than the third wave and end beyond the end of the third wave. Well, for the wave 5 to be greater than wave 3, it has to get to at least 3324.85 based on the math in here. Okay, we're talking another 315 points to the downside for the less ominous scenario. Okay, and so then what does this do? This scenario completes intermediate wave 1. Then we're going to get something like this. Then we get something more dramatic. So we'll see what happens in here. Do we get another 315 or plus points and bottom in here towards the end of October? Or do we break wide open like this? Okay, so we're going to be watching the wave structure in here, but the timing is very, very interesting. So let me zoom in a little bit and take a look at what's going on. Let's look at the 130 minute, which is, I like the 130 minute. It breaks the day into 3 equal bars. So here's what's going on with that. We're coming off that August high, wave 1, wave 2, and I believe we are still within wave 3, minor 3, in that here's 1, 2, beautiful island reversal. I love the way the gaps occurred right here at the same level in here. Now we're coming down. Now we gave some back here the last hour. Actually, if you look at the 30 minute, oh my gosh. I mean, look what they did. Here's the first 30 minutes of the day. Then they tried to rally it a little bit, and then they just hammered it all day long and gave a little bit back in the last 30 minutes. So pretty negative picture. When I look at the hourly view, this is how I've got this labeled out in terms of minute wave 1. Now, some folks are saying, well, this could be that minor 1 ended all the way down here, or minute 1 ended right here. Well, I just can't agree with that happening, because this is a 3-wave move. This is not a 5-wave move from this high to here. So when I look at this, I count this as 3, 3, and then the 5-wave move up for an expanded flat for wave 2. Now I know an expanded flat's not the preferred structure for a wave 2, but there's no rule that says it can't be. Okay. So right now, this is the way it looks to me, and it continues to look and act like it is ready to break down. We'll see what kind of follow through we get this week. Okay, so that's the Elliott Wave scenario. Let's take a look at the VIX and see what it's doing. Now, I've talked about this before. We've gotten very close up here, this 35 level. It seems like you approach the 35 level and people use it as a point to sell. And of course, that's really what happened here on the 28th of September. It got right up to 35 and they took it right back down. But yeah, we've pulled back a little bit, and then look at what happened on Thursday, Friday. So we're back above the 10-day moving average and looking like we want to push. And this line I've drawn here, that is the weekly view. And that's where I'm looking at and saying, okay, we close above that level, and I think we're going to be off to the races. I think it's going to imply an explosive type move. This looks very much like a potential rounding bottom in here. So I'm looking at a close above 37, 37 and a half. I think if we get something like that, then I think we're going to be really, really popping to the upside, which means the market is going to be breaking also. Now, what about the Elliott Wave picture, or not Elliott Wave, the put to call picture? So sentiment. Here's what's happening with the put to call ratio. So we've gotten a couple of extreme readings in here in the month of September, but nothing huge in terms of the put buying. And I'm talking about equity only, okay? So this focuses on buying puts and calls on just the stocks, not the indices. Okay, so right now we haven't gotten to a 10-day ratio. This is the 10-day moving 10-day ratio of it, average of it. And here's the actual put to call ratio. And so right now, when it gets into 80s and above on the 10-day, I color coded green, okay? And when it gets into the 90s on the single day, I color coded green over here. And when it gets above that, I color coded darker green, okay? So this hasn't gotten extreme in my opinion. Well, what's extreme? Well, this is extreme. This is March 2020. Okay, this is the kind of price action and the kind of bearish activity with put buying that you see. So what do these numbers mean? The number means, let's just use this right here, right, 109. That means there were 109 puts for every 100 calls. So you always measure and look at, well, when it starts to get up into the 90s and above as getting kind of bearish, because the market always has a bullish slant to it, a bullish sentiment to it. So you measure it as a percent of the call volume that's going on, the call buying. So here's what's going on back in March of 2020 at the bottom. We're not even close. We haven't seen anything in terms of the 10-day moving average of the put buying. So from my perspective, yeah, you can quote all the surveys you want to quote, but until people's action match their words, it doesn't matter. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll see what happens here. And then let's take a look at the two semiconductor stocks that I mentioned. Okay, here's AMD. So here's what AMD did on Friday, down $9. Down $9.41. They whacked it pretty hard. I thought for a second there that it was the weekly view, but no, this is the daily view. They came out and warned after the market closed on Thursday night. And what did they say? I believe they actually used the words evaporating demand. We're talking about that their projection for revenue actually dropped 16%. Total revenue actually dropped 16% in about a 2-month period. And because they had just been projecting, 16, quite a bit higher, like over $1 billion in revenue higher, like back in August. And so then they come out here on October 6th and they're like, wow, well, wait a minute. No, it's, we don't have it. It's not there. So this is what's going on here with AMD. And yeah, we're approaching a level where there's quite a bit of support, I would think, would come in here. And where did it come down to? It came down to the top of this. And let's just go back over here where I'm talking about, right in here. Okay, right about 58. And it closed at 58. So we're right at the top of a big level of support. Now, it could come right down into the middle of this, but if this doesn't hold, then, this thing is just going to keep stair-stepping its way down. Right now it doesn't, pretty negative. And, it's interesting, Micron Technology, MU, they warned recently on September 29th. And where was that? That was right here. And I thought, well, it's kind of interesting that they warned, but they had also warned, I think, back in August. Okay, so they've warned multiple times, but they warned again here, and then they've rallied it some. But then look what Micron has done here with the price action on Friday after you get a warning coming out of AMD. So this too is, pretty hard down. Now, the other thing that I noticed about Micron, which look at the long-term chart in here. This stock has never closed above the high that occurred in 2000. That's the picture on MU. That is And you talk about when you got back up here in the 90s, how many people up in the 90s would have thought, oh, the stock is going to get down to less than $2 a share? Now, I mean, so every time you think that it can't go any lower, you might want to think again. So we'll see what happens in here, but this is in a pretty solid downtrend. And of course, all the semiconductors are hurting right now. All right, that's the picture for today and for this weekend. We'll see what happens with the blood moon and the next couple of weeks. If you felt like the video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, hit that little subscriber button. And if you'd like more of this information on a regular basis, head on over to joehenches.net. Check out the website and the membership. Everyone have a great week. We'll talk to you on the next video.